I spent years holding my family together, paying the bills, sacrificing my own dreams. Then, on one cold Christmas night, they told me I didn't belong anymore. They called me a burden. They kicked me out, but I refused to disappear quietly. Before starting this story, if you are listening from USA, please leave a comment with number 9. And if you are from another country, please leave the name of your lovely country. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to listen to more stories. That Christmas Eve marked a turning point in my life, a moment I would never forget. My name is Lyanna, and I'm 25 years old. I live with my parents and my younger brother in a modest house nestled on the edge of a quiet town in Pennsylvania, the kind of place where everyone knows your name, but no one truly knows your story. I work a steady job at a local insurance agency. It's not a lucrative position, but it pays just enough to cover the essentials: electric, water, internet, and the little things that keep our household running. Truth be told, if I hadn't been managing the bills, our heater would have given out last winter, leaving us shivering through the coldest nights. I stayed not because I needed a roof over my head, but because they needed me. That evening, I returned home late from my shift. The air was crisp, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee clung faintly to my coat sleeves. The house looked tired. The Christmas tree was adorned with flickering string lights, dim and worn from years of use, casting a weak glow in the living room. My mother, Grace, was placing a plate of glazed ham on the table, moving with the kind of quiet exhaustion that comes from juggling too many things at once. My father, Thomas, sat at the head of the table, gripping a wine glass as if it were his last lifeline, eyes fixed absently on the ceiling light, lost in thoughts I could not reach. The dinner began in heavy silence. Only the soft clinks of silverware and a distant Christmas tune playing faintly from the kitchen radio filled the room. I tried to smile at my brother, Jonah, who was 17 this year, but the air was thick with tension. Suddenly, the silence shattered. My father slammed his knife down on the table with such force that I jumped. His eyes locked onto mine, cold and unforgiving. "Lyanna," he said, voice low and steady. "You've been a burden for far too long. It's time you left this house." For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. My heart froze while my mother let out a dry, almost nervous laugh, as if trying to mask the cruelty with a bad joke. But my father's gaze was deadly serious, unyielding. Jonah froze mid-bite, his fork hovering in the air, eyes wide with disbelief. I slowly set down my fork, swallowing the lump rising in my throat. "What did you say?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "You heard me," he replied firmly. "You've stayed here long enough. This is my house, and I say enough is enough. You need to move out." I wanted to scream, to demand why after all these years of sacrifice, after everything I had done to keep this family afloat. They would treat me like some unwanted guest, but no words came. I could only stare, numb and stunned. They didn't understand. I wasn't here because I needed their charity. I could afford my own apartment, live independently. I stayed because when Dad lost his job 3 years ago, and Mom only worked part-time at the local library, the bills piled up fast. Without my contributions, this house would have crumbled. My mother opened her mouth to protest, but my father cut her off with a cold finality. "I've made my decision. Grace." Jonah looked between us like we were strangers, his voice cracking with a mixture of fear and anger. "If you can kick her out this easily, who's next?" I took a deep breath, determined not to let the situation spiral into a scene. I didn't need to shout or cry. If they wanted me gone, I would leave, but not without making them face the cost of that choice. I leaned back in my chair, locking eyes with my parents. "All right," I said quietly. My father smirked. "Victorious in some silent war I didn't even know we were fighting." My mother kept her gaze lowered, silent, maybe stunned. Or maybe she had stopped caring long ago. I stood up, carrying my half-eaten plate to the sink. Every step away from the table felt like breaking a chain I hadn't realized was wrapped so tight around me. Before leaving the kitchen, I nodded to Jonah. He was the only person left in that house I still cared about. No one said a word. Only the sound of silverware hitting plates continued, but no one seemed to have an appetite anymore. I wasn't going to argue or beg. They made their choice, and so did I. No explanations. No announcements, just action. That Christmas Eve, the world outside was clear and calm. Inside me, I was frozen not from the chill, but from awakening. I was done being the invisible glue holding a family together that no longer wanted me. After leaving the table, I carried my half-eaten dinner to the kitchen sink, each step heavier than the last. I wasn't surprised by the silence that filled the house. No one followed me. No one asked me to stay. The weight of years of unnoticed sacrifices pressed down on me, but beneath it all, a fierce resolve was quietly building. I climbed the stairs slowly, the creak of each step echoing through the stillness. In my room, the space that once felt like a sanctuary now seemed foreign, a reminder of everything I was about to leave behind. Without hesitation, I opened my closet and began folding my clothes, each shirt and sweater packed with memories of overtime shifts and endless patience. This suitcase wasn't just for my belongings. It was the vessel of my independence, my escape, and my silent protest. As I folded the last hoodie, a soft knock came at my door. Jonah's voice was barely a whisper. "Lyanna, did you lock the door?" I turned and opened it just enough to let him in. His shoulders were hunched, weighed down not by the cold winter air outside, but by something much heavier. His eyes were red. Though he didn't let a tear fall, he rarely cried in front of me. "You're really leaving?" His voice cracked with disbelief. I nodded, the lump in my throat refusing to let words escape. "They told me to go. I have no reason to stay." He stepped into the room and sat on the edge of my bed, staring around at the emptiness I was creating. "If you leave, who's going to pay for the electricity? The internet. You know they can't afford it without you." His worry was raw, exposed. I didn't answer immediately. He wasn't foolish. He knew the truth better than anyone. I wasn't just his sister. I was the lifeline, the quiet provider keeping a sinking ship afloat. "I know," I said softly, voice steady but aching, "but I can't live my whole life as their wallet. Jonah, I deserve to breathe. I deserve a life of my own." He was silent for a long moment before whispering, "I want to come with you." I froze. "You can't," I said gently but firmly. "You're still in school. You're still a minor. They won't let you leave." "Then what about you?" he asked, eyes searching mine like if I didn't have a plan. "I shouldn't leave at all. Where will you go? Who will you stay with?" I exhaled, trying to hide the tightness in my chest. "I'll stay with Marissa for a few days. I have enough saved to rent a small place. I always had a plan. I just never thought I'd have to use it so soon." Jonah looked down at his lap, fists clenched. "They don't deserve you. They don't know what you've sacrificed." I reached out and placed my hand gently on his shoulder. "It doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that you don't get dragged down. 2, just hold on a little longer, once you're old enough. I'll help you get out." He nodded slowly, committing my words to memory. "You'll still text me." Right. Every day I smiled softly. Every single day. As Jonah left, he glanced back at me one last time. In his eyes, I saw not just sadness but the painful realization that from now on, he would live with 2 people who no longer acted like parents. I returned to packing, moving methodically through drawers and shelves, making sure I didn't leave anything important behind. My room was quieter now, a shell of the comfort it once offered. When I placed my suitcase by the door, it was nearly midnight. The house was dead silent, as if no one had ever lived there at all. I pulled out my phone and logged into the accounts for the utilities I had been paying: electricity, internet, water, even the credit card Mom used for groceries. One by one, I removed my banking information, cutting off the funds that had kept them afloat for years. No warnings, no explanations. They had ignored my presence for 4 years. Now they would feel the weight of my absence. As I wheeled my suitcase down the stairs, I caught a glimpse of the living room light glowing faintly through a crack under the door. No one came to see me off. No one said goodbye. The television murmured quietly, a Christmas program playing as if nothing had changed. I stepped out into the freezing night, the cold wind slapping my face like a final reminder. But I didn't shiver. For the first time in years, I felt free. I loaded my suitcase into the trunk of my car, slid into the driver's seat, and gripped the steering wheel with a steady hand. This Christmas Eve marked the beginning of the life I truly deserved, a life no one else could dictate. And with that thought, I drove away from the street that had held me captive for far too long. I arrived at Marissa's apartment just before midnight. The small two-bedroom unit was nothing fancy, but it radiated a warmth I hadn't felt in years. Marissa greeted me with a tight hug, saying, "Stay as long as you need. No questions, no judgment, just a safe harbor in the storm." The next morning, as sunlight filtered through the modest curtains, I sat at her worn wooden kitchen table and opened my laptop. I logged into the utility payment portal for the old house, the account still under my name. With a calm but resolute click, I removed my banking information. A warning popped up. "Are you sure you want to leave this account? Bills will no longer be paid automatically." I confirmed. One by one, I cut off electricity, internet, water, even the streaming service Mom used every night to escape reality. For years, my support had been treated as a given and unearned entitlement. Now, they would finally face the true cost of their neglect. In the days that followed, I settled into a rare peace. I woke up on time, ate dinner without tension, and slept without the constant edge of dread. Marissa's apartment was simple but filled with kindness. For the first time, I wasn't yelling, crying, or walking on eggshells. I was just living, but peace was short-lived. On a hectic Wednesday afternoon at work, my phone buzzed relentlessly. 5 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad, and 1 message from Jonah. The power had been cut off. Dad was furious, screaming at the house in frustration. I didn't reply not because I didn't care, but because I had cared too much for too long. An hour later, Mom sent a desperate message. "Lyanna, the internet's down. The TV won't turn on. What did you do?" I read it without a shred of guilt. They wanted me gone. They shouldn't expect me to keep funding a home that no longer had a place for me. That evening, as Marissa and I prepared a simple meal, the phone rang again. I wasn't going to answer, but something nudged me. It was Mom, voice trembling with fear and confusion. "The power's out, and your dad is losing it. What did you do?" I answered calmly. "I only stopped paying the bills I was responsible for. From now on, you need to take care of yourselves." Mom's voice cracked. "You can't do this. This is your home." I pressed my lips together, steadying my voice. "No, it's the place Dad kicked me out of. I'm just following his orders." A heavy silence fell. "Finally," she whispered. "Dad thinks you're trying to get revenge." I let out a dry laugh. "No, Mom, I'm just living my life. What bothers you is that I'm no longer living it for you." I hung up before she could say more. No more explanations. No more silent endurance. In the days that followed, suspicious login attempts flooded my bank account alerts. Dad was desperate to regain control. Digging through old notebooks to find passwords, Jonah warned me, voice tense and worried. I changed every password, locked down every account, and set up 2-step verification with fingerprint scans. No loopholes, no access. My family was unraveling, and I was finally free to rebuild. That night, just as I stepped out of the shower, Marissa's voice called out from the living room. "Lyanna, someone is banging on the door." My heart dropped, hair still dripping wet as I hurried to the front. Through the peephole, I saw my father's face red, bloodshot eyes filled with rage. His fists pounded relentlessly against the door. "Lyanna, open up. You think you can just walk away?" Marissa's face was pale, panic flickering in her eyes. "Are you calling the police?" I nodded, already dialing 911. The operator's calm voice guided me through the tense minutes as my father's pounding grew louder, his shouts slicing through the night. "He thinks he owns this place," I whispered to Marissa, locking the door tighter. "But he doesn't anymore. When the officers arrived, They moved quickly. One knocked gently. "Police. Open the door. Stay calm." I stepped aside, heart pounding. As they entered, the two officers confronted my father firmly. "Sir, you are causing a disturbance. You need to leave immediately." His voice thundered back. "She's my daughter. I have the right to talk to her." One officer held his ground. "Not like this. Sir, your daughter called us because she felt threatened. If you don't leave now, we will take action." But he refused. With a sudden lunge toward me, I instinctively stepped back, palms clenched, heart racing wildly. The officers restrained him quickly. "Please keep your distance," one said. His fury twisted his face as he shouted, "She owes me. She has no right to treat me this way. I'm her father. I have rights." Those words hit me harder than any blow. For years, he had used them to control me, to trap me in fear. But tonight, I was no longer that frightened girl. "I owe you nothing," I said steadily. Locking eyes with him, "You pushed me out of this family. Now, you live with that." Handcuffs clicked coldly around his wrists as he was led away. I watched the man who had once been my father, now broken and defeated. "Lyanna, you will regret this," he hissed, his voice filled with venom. "You will pay for betraying your family." I stood my ground, voice calm but firm. "No, I'm just finally living my life." The officers escorted him out, and the heavy door closed behind him with a finality I had longed for. Marissa came over and squeezed my shoulder gently. "Are you okay?" I nodded, though my throat tightened. "I am now. I never thought it would come to this, but I had to do what was right." That night, I realized the battle for my freedom had just begun. But this time, I was ready to fight not with fear, but with strength. A few days after the police had taken my father away, I received a message that sent a chill down my spine. "Lyanna, your car is parked outside the house." It was from Jonah. My heart raced. That car held more than just my belongings. It was a symbol of my independence. I knew it should not have been there. I immediately called Marissa to double-check the spare key she kept safe. It was untouched. That meant someone had a copy I didn't know about. Driving back to the neighborhood I had left behind was surreal. The familiar streets felt alien, shadowed by memories I was desperate to forget. My dark blue sedan was parked silently in front of the house, its license plates unmistakable. As I approached, the door handle was coated with dust, but inside, things told a different story. There was a water bottle on the floor, unfamiliar shoes tucked under the seat, and a grocery receipt dated 2 days ago with my mother's name printed clearly. A cold fury settled in my chest. I rang the doorbell. When my mother answered, her face tightened, hair pulled back, clutching a small black purse. She looked like a woman forced into a corner. "Lyanna," she said coldly, using the name she once called me. "Why are you here?" I looked her directly in the eyes. "You took my car, didn't you?" She shrugged, stepping aside. It was just sitting there unused. "I only borrowed it for a while." "Borrowed?" I laughed without humor. "You've been driving it for a week, paying gas with whose money? And why is the driver's seat reclined like someone's been sleeping in it?" She turned away, dropping her purse on the table without a word. I glanced around the living room. My laptop, the one I left on the bookshelf, was gone. "Where's my laptop?" I asked, heart pounding. She froze, then answered evenly, "I sold it." For money, I pressed, already knowing the answer. "To buy medicine for your father." She said quietly, "This house needs a lot. You don't live here anymore. What you left is just left behind." My hands clenched, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Then you'll have to deal with the consequences." "I'm calling the police." Her voice rose in panic. "I'm your mother. You can't do this." I looked her in the eye and said firmly, "Then why could you steal my car and sell my belongings? I forgave you once. This is the second time, and it's the last." I called 911 immediately. When the officers arrived, I showed them the grocery receipt and pulled up GPS tracking logs proving my car's recent movements. At first, my mother tried to argue. When asked for proof of ownership, she had none. The officer told her to gather what remained so I could collect it. and that I could file a formal theft report if I wished. She no longer shouted. Her face had gone pale, her hands trembling. "Lyanna, what are you doing to your mother?" she whispered. I answered softly. "I'm doing what you should have taught me, protecting what's mine." Without looking back, I turned and walked away. That night, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You think you've won? You'll regret betraying your family. No signature, no name, but I knew exactly who it was." Just 3 days after my father's arrest, my phone buzzed with a message that made my hands tremble. It read, "You think you can run, but you cannot hide forever. Family is forever. Lyanna." No name, no signature, just a chilling reminder that the fight was far from over. I knew immediately who sent it. That morning, I had checked the county jail records. The bright red letters confirmed he had been released on bail less than 12 hours ago. The timing was no coincidence. Jonah called me quietly later that day. "Lyanna, Dad's out. He's already asking around for money. Uncle Mark came by the house this morning, handed Mom an envelope, and left. Dad's planning something." My chest tightened. Mark, Dad's longtime drinking buddy. Was Trouble a man whose wild parties had once drawn police calls from neighbors? If Mark was involved, this wasn't just a rescue, it was an alliance, and maybe the start of something far worse. That night, I sat in Marissa's apartment, the walls feeling both protective and confining. I had found a fragile peace here, but my mind was restless. If Dad knew where I was, he would come after me. Someone like him didn't accept defeat. "I have to leave tonight," I told Marissa, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. She nodded immediately. "If anything happens, call me. Don't hesitate." I called Nora, a coworker who had once offered me a spare room. I had refused then, not wanting to be a burden. Now, I had no choice. She welcomed me without questions. "Bring your things any time." With Marissa's help, I packed quickly just the essentials: clothes, documents, my laptop. Every item carried the weight of a life I was leaving behind, before leaving. I double-checked the security system's cameras, smart locks, phone alarms. Everything was set. Marissa's reassuring hand on my shoulder reminded me, "You're not alone. We'll call the police if anything seems off." Driving away that night, the city lights blurred as I focused on survival. My phone buzzed again, another message from the same unknown number. "You can run, but you cannot hide." I didn't reply. Instead, I took a screenshot and sent it, along with my previous reports, directly to the police, in the message box. I typed, "Clearly I am being threatened by the man who used to be my father. I no longer feel safe." I knew Dad wouldn't give up easily, but this time, I was no longer silent. If he wanted to make me a target, he would find a target that fought back. That weekend, I returned to the old house to collect what was left of my things. This time, I didn't go alone. A police officer accompanied me under a civil standby order I had filed. Jonah waited on the porch, exhaustion etched across his face. "Are you sure you want to go in alone?" I nodded. "I'm only here to collect my things. If they interfere, I want you to intervene." The door opened to a scene frozen in tension. My mother sat clutching her purse tightly, the last thing she seemed to control. My father's cold gaze lingered in the kitchen, silent and unreadable. I didn't look at them. I walked straight upstairs to the room that had been my refuge and my prison for 4 long years. The closet was empty, my belongings shoved into plastic bags, scattered across the floor like remnants of a life I no longer belonged to. Without letting myself think too much, I packed everything into my suitcase. These weren't pieces of home anymore. They were fragments of a past I had finally stepped away from. The final day I stepped back into that house felt like closing a painful chapter for good. I didn't come alone this time. A police officer stood beside me under the civil standby order I had filed, ready to intervene if anything went wrong. Jonah waited on the porch, his face drawn and tired, clutching a small backpack filled with the few things he could carry. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked quietly, as if the walls themselves might collapse under the weight of our past. I nodded. "I'm only here to collect what's mine. If they interfere, the officer will handle it." The door opened slowly. My mother sat on the couch, clutching her purse like a lifeline, her eyes sharp but weary. My father stood silently in the kitchen, his expression cold and unreadable. I didn't meet their eyes. I walked straight upstairs, into the room that had been my refuge and my prison for nearly 4 years. The closet was emptied. My belongings were shoved into 2 plastic bags. Scattered across the floor, old books, photos, keepsakes, fragments of a life I was ready to leave behind. I packed quickly but methodically, refusing to give myself time to think about the memories each item held. When I came back downstairs, dragging the last suitcase, my mother suddenly stood up, voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. "You're not going to say anything after everything. You're just going to leave in silence." I paused but did not turn around. My voice was calm, emotionless, and full of the strength I had found over these months. I said plenty before, and you never listened. This was your choice, your husband's choice, not mine. I turned slowly to face her, meeting her gaze directly for the first time in months. You stayed silent while he humiliated me. You stood by when he kicked me out on Christmas Eve. You sold my belongings as if I never existed. And you think I owe you a goodbye? She said nothing, eyes cast down as if trying to disappear. Before my words could hang in the air too long, my father stepped forward, his anger simmering beneath the surface. "You think cutting ties will solve anything? You're ruining your family's name." I let out a cold, bitter laugh. "No, I'm just living the lesson this family taught me: if you aren't respected, you don't stay." From my pocket, I pulled out a folded piece of paper, a copy of the restraining order petition I had filed. "If either of you sends me another message, shows up where I live, or tries to access my accounts, I'll file this immediately. Next time, it won't just be a polite knock from the police." The officer beside me nodded in confirmation. "We have made a note in the record. Any further threats or contact will be taken very seriously." Turning to Jonah, I said softly, "You can stay here a few more months. But if it becomes unbearable, just call me. I'll come get you." He nodded silently, a quiet understanding passing between us. No words were needed. I left that house for the last time without looking back. I refused to carry their stares or the heavy memories any longer. Not from my mother, not from my father, not from the past. That same day, I changed my phone number, canceled all accounts tied to the old address, and moved into a small, bright apartment close to work with Nora's help. This place was quiet, safe, and mine. I cut off all contact with my family. No more calls, no more messages, no more fear when the doorbell rang. The weeks that followed were a process of rebuilding, opening new bank accounts, buying a new laptop, setting up a workspace, hanging pictures on the walls myself. Each small action was a declaration I had chosen this life, and I deserved it. I knew one day they might try to reach me through a letter, a distant relative, or some whispered story. But this time, I wasn't going back. 2 years have passed since I walked away from that family, like excising a festering wound. My life now is small, peaceful, and entirely mine. Yet, I think often about Jonah still trapped in that house, enduring the storms of a family that never truly cared. Every text he sends is filled with forced calm. "I'm fine. I'm used to it. But no child should ever have to get used to being unwanted in their own home. I keep my promise. I'm only a phone call away." When he finally turned 18, he didn't throw a party or announce his freedom on social media. He simply sent me a short message: "Sis, I'm ready." I picked him up the next morning, his backpack light, holding just a few clothes, a couple of books, and a framed photo of us from happier days. No one came to see him off. We sat across from each other in a small noodle shop, smiling like 2 survivors waking from a long nightmare. "Do you think they'll try to find you?" I asked, watching his calm face. "Definitely," he said, "but I'll do what you did, cut them off. They don't have any power over me anymore." I squeezed his hand tightly, proud beyond words. Our parents' lives collapsed after we left. Jobs lost, fights escalating, eviction from the house, through a distant relative. I heard they now lived in a rundown apartment in a dangerous part of town. sending bitter letters filled with blame and pleas. I never responded. There was nothing left to say or give. What we have now, Jonah and I, is proof that freedom is possible. That, sometimes, the courage to walk away from pain is the first step toward peace. We didn't need a perfect family. We needed each other. Two lost kids, finally walking forward on their own terms. This story of Lyanna and Jonah reminds us that sometimes the most courageous act we can take is to walk away from relationships that hurt us, even if they are bound by blood. True freedom and peace come not from enduring pain silently, but from standing up for ourselves and choosing a life where we are respected and valued. It is a powerful reminder that no one deserves to feel invisible or unwanted in their own home, and that rebuilding one's life takes strength, hope, and the willingness to start anew. This story is a work of fiction created for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to attack or defame any individual, family, or organization. Any resemblance to real persons or events is purely coincidental. If this story moved you or sparked a thought, please let us know by commenting below. Your likes, shares, and subscriptions help us create more stories that inspire and entertain. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching and being part of our community.